Good afternoon, everybody, and many thanks for having made it to the multi-stakeholder dialogues after the lunch break. And many thanks to everybody who is connected with us online and will be following our conversation online. We're just directly going to dive in today's session. And today's session has a very, very strong focus on what I would describe as peoples, individuals, how to get individuals and people into the transformation that we need to achieve to end plastic pollution, to transform the way in which plastic is produced and consumed. And as you recall, this conversation comes as a sequence of conversations that we have already started on Sunday, had yesterday on Sunday. We had been looking across the full life cycle of plastic and explored different options and different solutions. Yesterday, we have been going a little bit more in depth in understanding what a just transition would look like and what are the conditions that need to be reflected. And today we will zoom in a bit more in depth on the role of individuals and how their actions, their decisions are really crucial in transforming, in creating the solution that we want to have ahead of us. And the excellent panelists that are joining us today, two are with me in the room and two are connecting with us online, are actually going to bring different dimensions of how this engagement, this transformation would look like, and the role of people, the role of individuals in that transformation. So I'm just going to announce the amazing set of speakers that is joining me today on the panel, and then we'll just start the conversation with all of them. And as you usually do, the conversation will then expand to bring in all of you as well. So please get ready to be part of the conversation. So in today's panel, we will have connected online Sabine Pall from the University of Vienna. Sabine is a social psychologist who investigates perception and behavior change, particularly in area related to protecting marine environment, marine litter, microplastic, and energy efficiency. And Sabine has been contributing to very important reports associated with the agenda of microplastics and led a global stop-take of action against plastic pollution in the year 2020. Sabine, welcome. I'm just going to ask you to hear your voice so that you know you can hear us.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here. It would be even better if I could be there in Dakar with you.
Thanks, Sabine, and we can hear you loud and clear. Great. Welcome to our panel today. The second expert who is going to be with us on the panel is Ellie Moss. Ellie has an extensive experience developing environmental and social impact strategy for corporations, investors, and not-for-profit organizations. And I've been interacting very, very closely with Ellie very recently, as she has been involved in a number of publications that have been looking very much in depth into the role of campaigns, and particularly media campaigns, in shifting behavior, inspiring change. Ellie, are you hearing us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. We hear you and see you. Fantastic. Very nice seeing you on screen. And I'm now moving to introduce the amazing speakers that are with me on the panel physically today. We have Zuhair Ahmed Kaushik, and I'm sure I made plenty of mistake in telling the name. I'll improve along the panel. Zuhair is an environmental education and climate activist, and he has been advocating for the inclusion of youth voices in international environmental policy negotiation. And Zoar, you are the manager of earthday.org in Bangladesh. So we'll hopefully discover a little bit more of earthday.org.
Yeah.
Excellent. And welcome to the panel as
Thank
well.
you.
And I'm going to conclude with Lorena Terrazas. Lorena is originally from Bolivia and is the regional facilitator for NGOs for the Latin American and Caribbean region. And Lorena has a wealth of experience of being part of intergovernmental negotiation and has been following very closely also climate-related negotiation, bringing in civil society perspective. Lorena, welcome to the panel.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
So I'm going to start bringing in the conversation our experts who are online, and I'm going to start by giving the floor to Sabine first. And Sabine, I want to get your perspective and your experience and your knowledge on how we can engage individual people around the issue of plastic. We would probably need, in certain instances, really to trigger a significant change in their behavior. How can we make it happen?
Many thanks. So plastic is a system, as said by many contributors already, and within the system, I want to highlight this role of decisions and behaviors of different actors, actually, not just individuals, but also communities, different sectors, and governments. So this human dimension is the core of my interest because people are the sole cause of plastic pollution, but they are also the solution. And we need to understand why they act in certain ways and how to change this to find solutions. So what are the drivers, the reasons for selecting certain materials or products, or on the other hand, for taking part in cleanups? I want to just raise some of the motives we find in research. So behavior might be driven by social norms, by what other people do. They might be driven by habits, by convenience, by economic constraints, or they could be driven by spiritual values, by a desire to protect the environment, or by self-image motives, such as wanting to impress others. There are many different motives. We have to understand these motives in order to make change happen. And they're, of course, set in a cultural context related to education and upbringing as well. Knowing such motives, such drivers, gives us intervention points and highlights what to look out for when attempting change, whether interventions or tools are focused on legal or economic pathways or on psychological levers of change that could be addressed in communication or behavior change campaigns. Behavior change campaigns in particular can work rapidly if they're designed by experts and resourced properly, much faster than new regulation, new tech, or laws. And the other advantage is that they might circumvent some of the barriers, backlash against tools, such as black markets we've seen spring up in response to bans. So we need to bear people in mind and always co-create solutions. There is a lot of goodwill, a lot of energy in communities globally. They see plastic pollution as a core issue. They don't like it. They want it to be addressed. It's very different to climate change, for example. Communities want to make a difference, but there has to be this reciprocity, this mutual trust, genuine long-term commitment from those in power to listen and take on board local knowledge, shared responsibility and leadership. This is what we need, not greenwashing, but genuine partnership to find those long-term solutions. I want to also slightly veer towards a different topic. The public discussion has so far mainly centered on natural environments and plastic pollution. So harm to animals, harm to marine life. But the concern about human health risks is increasing rapidly and could change the discourse enormously. We have growing awareness of small particles, microplastics, entering waterways, being present in food, being present in air. So very different pathways to people's concerns. And they're becoming aware of this. There's a WHO report expected very soon that deals with this issue. And this change in discussion, this emerging health risk, will contribute to more calls for action by the public and put pressure on all actors. In addition to this link between plastic and human health through particles, through fibers, there is the link to chemicals, which greatly worries people. Additives are invariably linked to plastic production and a major issue. And again, an appeal to industry, to actors to be transparent, to simplify products and mixtures, phase out harmful substances such as further chemicals. For a public-facing, a people-facing view, labeling can really help the transparency. It can help trust and help consumers make better decisions in those cases where they have the luxury of having choice. I want to just finish with a key point. Behavior is really, really important. Behavior cannot solve plastic pollution on its own, especially if we look at behavior of individuals. We need to think about social context, about structural context. This is a really important point. Behavior needs to be enabled and empowered by societal norms, by leadership, by instruments and infrastructure. And in turn, instruments and infrastructure need to develop with behavior in mind. So the instrument, the Global Plastic Treaty, needs to take into account what people do currently and why, to avoid regrettable substitutions, unwanted side effects, to encourage synergies and co-benefits. And evaluation and assessment of what we do is a firm part of it. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Sabine. Very, very interesting point. You've been putting us back into the context of a conversation on the system within which we're going to frame our discussion today. You have recalled us the what in terms of what is the behavior that we're seeing, but also particularly the why and what is the driver of that behavior. And Sabine, I've really liked a lot that you have also helped us see what can be some of the change makers in our conversation when we're shifting towards what you described an natural environment related conversation to one that is bringing more at the center also human health and how this has an important impact in changing behavior. Sabine, I'll move to the next speaker, but I'm sure there will be questions and suggestions coming your way as we advance the conversation. And Ellie, I'm going to move to you with with a new reflection that is related around the amazing work that Ellie you did also in terms of analyzing how campaigns and media campaigns have been reaching out to individuals and conveying messages around their role and their opportunities in this agenda related to plastics. And Ellie, it would be great to hear a little bit what emerged from those assessments and maybe just distill what will be important for us to take home going forward and as the discussions are going to progress on the agreement.
Thank you, Elisa, and it's a real pleasure to be here speaking with everyone today. I'm very excited to share the findings from the research that we did together. And I also want to let people know that they can see these findings online at a website called Campaigns That Work. So the address is www.campaigns.work.org. And so you can see more detail and examples there, but I'll give you the highlights here. I want to share 5 best practices that we found from the research that we did on influencing behavior. Of course, I would echo everything Sabine said, that in order for behavior to be part of the solution, people have to be able to make meaningful choices. So there needs to be something that individuals can do that is part of the solution. And these behavioral recommendations that I will make are relevant to any solution, upstream, downstream. It's all about how do, once people have a choice they can make, how do we encourage them to make that choice? Number 1, make it relevant. This is really important. We need to minimize the distance people feel between their actions and the impact of their actions. So this can be highlighting the connection of the impact of people's choices on their community, on people like me, and needs to be relevant now. So we need to make sure that people aren't seeing the impacts of their behavior as being something that's very far in the future, or things that are only impacting people that are not like me, which people are less motivated to take action for people that they perceive to be very different from them, or very far away. So number one is make it relevant. Number two, this is something Sabina spoke about as well. We need to make the good behavior the social norm. So whatever we can do to show people that the behavior we want them to take is what everyone else is doing, or it's what society expects us to do. So we want to really reinforce good social norms, the behaviors that we want people to be taking, whether that's returning a reusable cup in a correct amount of time, or placing their recyclable items in the recycling bin, or choosing a non-plastic option in the first place. The more we can do to show people making the right choices, the better. That can include using celebrities and influencers, having media depict people making the right choices, not as the main storyline, but just as the normal thing to do. And we want to be careful not to normalize the wrong behaviors. So we don't want to share statistics like 80% of people make the wrong choice, because even though we're saying it's the wrong choice, when people hear that that's what most people are doing, then that's what they think is the right thing to do. Number three, we need to tell people what they should do, not what they should not do. This is also consistent with parenting. You want to give the good option, not the wrong, not say, don't do this. We want to be very specific. So tell people what are the solutions that they can take action on. People tend to feel overwhelmed and hopeless when it comes to campaigns that tell them all of the terrible things that are happening with plastic and plastic waste. We need to tell them what they can do, and we need to show them that even small things add up. That even small things, that it might feel like a small choice for me to choose the cucumber that's not wrapped in plastic compared to the one that is wrapped in plastic, but small things add up. And also this connects back to social norms. So when one person does it, when we all do it, it becomes normal. It becomes the thing to do. Number four, catalyze commitment. So the way we can turn intentions into actions is by having people commit to them in some way, with a friend, with a family member, on social media. We like to, as human beings, we like to think of ourselves as people who do what we say we will do. So when you ask someone to say what they're going to do, they are already more likely to do it. Number five, tap positive emotions. So often campaigns are things that make us feel bad. They make us afraid, they make us feel guilty, they make us feel hopeless. Those emotions can change behavior, but they do so in the short term, and they're not very effective. For longer term behavior change, it's important to tap emotions like pride, like hope, like optimism, and love. These emotions actually shape behaviors more effectively long term. And the last thing I'll say is to use humor. Humor is a very powerful way of critiquing social behaviors that are unhelpful and allowing people to hear it and feel open to changing something, because it's not directly criticizing their behavior. It's making them laugh about how strange it is that we've created certain systems, and it creates an opening to shift to a more positive system for everyone. So humor is a secret weapon because it makes people happy, it's memorable, and it's a way to show people the new way in a more hopeful and delightful way. So I will stop there for now, and I look forward to further discussion. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ellie. I guess I'll leave you with a question that, at least in my mind, I started to raise the curiosity. We want to know whether there are campaigns that tick all the boxes that you mentioned, but we'll get back to you and learn more from you. And I'm going to move to Zuar. And you're bringing in our discussion the voice, the very powerful voice of youth. And I've heard all the energy and all the power that youth have been bringing in discussions, such as all the process related to Stockholm Plus 50, where I've also had the opportunity to interact with you and some of the colleagues of the Youth Task Force. And I'm looking forward to hearing your powerful voice and the voice of youth in this conversation in terms of a driver of change, a solution for the future. Your perspective.
Okay, I think it's working. So we all know that youth, I would say youth and children, we don't want to leave children behind. So youth and children, they are one of the 9 major group and stakeholders. And we know that youth are activists, entrepreneurs, advocates, and educators. And they are creating change worldwide. They are fighting for solution. They are fighting for engaging in the policy negotiations. So when it comes to youth engagement, first of all, I would like to address the issue education and literacy, because we find most of the people think that young people, they are not educated enough to get engaged in the policy negotiation and in this kind of spaces. So first of all, we need to educate young people. We need to let them know how to be more conscious about the environmental things, and how they can, engage from individual, community, regional, international level, and what are their environmental rights, and how these decisions are affecting their lives. Second of all, I would like to address the engagement of young people in the policy advocacy and negotiations. Here in this ad hoc open-ended working group meeting, I hardly can find any young people, maybe except me. I cannot see any young people. So this has been a challenge. Like in the next INC meeting, so we are already, in compared to the other stakeholders, we already will be behind in, acting towards it, because the young people, they're not engaged here, so they are lacking capacities for the next meeting. So I hope that in the next meeting, we'll see more young people engaged in this kind of INC1, or how many INCs are going to take place. So third, the most important is making youth and children part of the member state delegation. We are literally advocating for these, to making young people part of the delegation of different member states. Some of the member states, especially from the European Union, they are now acting to engage young people as the part of their member state delegation, but we need the global south countries to engage young people, at least 1 or 2 young people to engage, not just young people, youth individuals, early career scientists, young professionals, so that they can also share their inputs toward the policy making. Fourth is obviously we'd like to share that all the discussions are happening, how to end plastic pollution. People are thinking about all the 3 years or 7 years now, and a lot of people are talking about recycling. I know that recycling is maybe one of the options, but it shouldn't be given much priority, because when plastic is made, the compositions that consist, oil, gas, and different kind of chemicals, and different kinds of various kind of plastics are very different in nature, and it's even the recycling process is quite harmful, and it actually emits a lot of carbons. When it comes to employment generation for the young people, also employment can be generated through the process of finding eco-friendly alternatives of plastics. And obviously, recycling is one of the options, but young people also can get engaged in this process, and more funding support should be available for the young people, so that they can be entrepreneurs, they can create new enterprises. As well as now it has been a time to address the pollutions that we have already created so far, and also we need to think about the future. So the problem that has been created already, we need to cope with those. We need to do cleanups. We need to engage our young people. We need to make more technology available so that we can do cleanups efficiently. And secondly, we should avoid further harmful plastic pollutions. I know it will take some time to, to go through this transition period to find environment-friendly solutions, but at least we have to make sure that we are avoiding single use of plastic. Um, uh, okay, I think
Super.
it.
Thank you very much. And I guess we can still enter the category of young in our spirits, if not in age, and still be close to you and bring your perspective in the conversation. So, excellent point around the different roles that youth and children would be playing going forward, and the different perspectives. Um, Let me move to our last panelist. Lorena, you're bringing in yet a different perspective and yet a different wealth of knowledge and experience from indigenous communities. And what are the messages and opportunities, and what can we learn as well from that wealth of knowledge and experience?
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, the amazing team for UNEP. Today, I want to express my intervention in my mother language, Spanish, please. Well, bien, muchas gracias por permitirme estar acá.
Thank you for allowing me to be here. I'd just like to say that, first and foremost, Indigenous people, Indigenous communities, even though are vulnerable to pollution, to everything that is taking place throughout the world, there are also protagonists. They are seeking solutions actively. They are building local solutions, which sometimes, even though science is investigating and governments are attempting to participate, Indigenous people also seek to contribute, and with that be able to recover a lot of the ancestral knowledge, a lot of the traditional knowledge, because plastic didn't exist before. There was no pollution. And how did they live? How did they move their language? How do communities move about without having to use so much plastic, so much consumption? And so, there are many of us who are indigenous and have grown up in the city, but we have been able to recover that wisdom from our parents, from our grandparents. So we need to rethink, reconnect with nature, hug the forest, honestly, and just know origins. Search for those solutions, for for that dialogue with nature, because many say, "Oh yeah," when they go to a forest, "Oh, so pretty. It looks green." But the forest has a spirit, and if you misbehave and if you begin to cut the tree too much, the the forest reacts, and people say, "Okay, so why did I get lost?" Because there's a spirit that's taking care of the animals, of the land, and all of that is being lost due to pollution and the crisis that we are experiencing at a global level. On the other hand, I also feel that women, particularly women who are living in the territory, are attempting to search for solutions to food safety due to the existing pollution because of plastic and other types of pollutants. What's concerning about all this is that sometimes um, we don't have public policies, but now, um, before, and I'm very excited because having announced this public announcement, there are many things that must be discussed. First, we've discussed about considering the life cycle of plastics from the beginning to the end and speak not only about consumers, because the whole time we're talking about consumption, and people, oh, and culture per country. We have to start speaking about producers and what this entails for the industry, what it means for economy, but also for the health and well-being of individuals and people. I do believe that we may say a lot, but what's important is that we generate alliances and initiatives. Political dialogue is very well. We're going to accompany it as a civil society and as organizations. However, in parallel, we also have to mobilize, we have to act, we have to provide an example. And the first thing we need to do is see around us and see within ourselves what are they doing, what is the other one doing. Organizations, make sure government is more solidary because we are lacking. We are facing a global crisis, and this is a crisis of civilization as a whole. So we need to change the paradigms for development, and with that, this extreme consumism and from small actions, know that we are truly are contributing to these transcendent change. Last but not least, the vision that we have been working on so much and that is rescued from the different indigenous peoples is to understand that the land is a living being. It's and it manifests itself, and now the message from Mother Earth is save me and save me through your actions from the space, where you find yourself in, private, public, academic. We should all be doing something. Thank you.
Thank you also for having flagged specifically the role of women in this conversation. That was a very interesting point you have been tabling. And I'm now going to open for a bit more of conversation with all of us in the room, with people connected online. We have seeing 160 plus participants following us online. And I'm just going to give the floor to the hands that I see raised in the order in which I see them on the screen. So I'm seeing Jeremy Douglas on the screen with a hand raised. Jeremy, can you come in?
Hello, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, please.
Great, thank you. Thank you, and thank you to the excellent presenters for very interesting perspectives and topics, which is very near and dear to my heart and the organization I represent, which is Delterra. We are an environmental NGO founded by McKinsey and Company, and we're working in the global south to fix the broken waste and recycling systems and try to create value for communities on the ground, as well as create a circular economy with practical actions so we can get those materials that are currently going to landfill back into productive use. And behavior change has been absolutely critical to us achieving impact, all the way from teaching people how to separate waste for the first time in their home or in their business, and then making the collection work, going to sorting centers, and then finding end markets for those materials. And so actually in the chat, I put a link to two papers we recently published based on our findings working in Indonesia and Argentina, and what we found worked well with behavior change. One of them, which was mentioned by one of the speakers, was that it actually costs less in many cases to implement behavior change campaigns than technological or mechanical recycling or other solutions. And what we found that was working from the bottom up at the community level in their language with the people that they listen to and that have influence, whether it be a local leader or an influencer or a neighbor, that had staying power and a lasting effect. But it was ineffective if the infrastructure and the top-down system wasn't there as well. So we really need vice versa. If you only implement a top-down campaign or policies without a supportive behavior changing environment on the ground, owned and led by communities, it's not going to work very well. So our biggest challenge now is how to take these pilots that we've done successfully in a number of places in Bali and Buenos Aires, and how do we scale behavior change? I think that's a question I would maybe pose to all of the participants here. Is behavior change has to happen at the most local level. So how do you scale that? Because the scale of the problem is massive. So how do we scale behavior change, whether it's recycling or material choices, refusing certain products from the beginning? How do we bring that rapidly to scale? What does that look like? So that's just some insights I thought I would mention, and maybe a question just to pose to folks as we're looking forward to how behavior change can have impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, and thanks for having shared additional sources on the chat. I'll take another question online, and then I'm coming to the room to explore whether there's further question. I'll just take one participant online, and then I'll be giving you immediately the floor. So I am seeing Siddharth Singh online.
Can you hear me?
Welcome. We see you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank the distinguished panel for sharing their experiences and knowledge. I represent a civil society organization based out of India. We are basically into advocacy, environmental policy. Um, Now, my question is, we kind of spoke about behavior change, and I also see that the studies that Jeremy has shared talks about the return on investment on behavior change. Uh, Now, the problem with the global South countries, as I understand them, is uh, even the environmental consciousness kind of comes at a cost. So if I'm not from an affluent background, I may not be able to actually afford, products that are environmentally conscious. And as I see it, uh, uh, we kind of the consumer is kind of left at the mercy of these big brands. And I'm sorry, Ellie, because you talked about being positive and not negative, but being an advocacy organization, these are some of the key pain points that we could identify. So I would like to kind of hear the comments from the panel on these two perspectives. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to take the last question that we can afford here in the room, and then I'll be coming back to all the speakers with maybe your reflections on the question, and if you have any takeaway message that you would want to leave with those who are participating in the session today. Please, the floor is yours.
Hi, Ruth Spencer from Antigua. Sometimes I think we underestimate the power of people. The people know plastics is going to harm their health and the environment. They will do something about it. What I've found out is that we do the public education and the awareness. When you bring awareness to people, there has to be follow-up actions. What is the follow-up? We do some small pilots. We make products. But then, as Jeremy said, we have to scale up. But where is the technology, the financing to scale up? Most of the donors, you go to the government, and that's where your resources stay. It does not trickle down to the people who are doing the actions to scale up. And that's why we need a change. That's why we need new voices in environmental decision making. It's our future. It's our children's future. We don't want the harm to be done. We don't want to provide the evidence of harm. So when we are ready to move, support us. Provide resources, provide capacity building. I'm working with passionate groups who are taking actions across all the waste streams, but they can only do that much. Only do that much. So it's for our partners to work with us, build the collaborations, so we can do greater things. Amen.
Thank you very much for bringing the passion into the room. And I'll then go back to the speakers that have been with us today. And I'll just ask you in, let's say, 1 minute, 2 minutes, to maybe capture some of your reflection on the questions that have been raised. And if you would want to leave the participants today with a message, that's your opportunity. Sabine, do I see you still online?
Yes, I'm here, but I'm happy not to go first because everyone has such important contributions.
Then let me check with Ellie. Ellie, would you want to come in? I think you have been mentioned in a couple of interventions as well.
Sure, I'm happy to, but I'll keep it quick so we have time for everyone. Uh, I really appreciate all of the comments and questions. I'm familiar with Delterra's work. Absolutely recommend people look at their resources. To the question of how do we scale behavior change, I completely agree that what we need to be doing is working at the local level, making everything very relevant, starting with communities, starting with people. At the same time, and I've appreciated the comments in the chat, this is not something individuals can solve on their own. Like, we need solutions, we need choices, we need meaningful options that we can take. And meaningful means affordable as well as available. So I completely appreciate the comments from Siddharth about how this needs to work for everyone. This plastic free or minimizing plastic cannot only be for wealthy people. It has to be for everybody. And so I guess the sort of, without taking too much time, really appreciate what everyone has said. My suggestions are start where you can start and grow as much as you can. We have to build over time. We can build in lots of places at the same time. I think that the importance of an immersive experience is really can't be understated. The more we can create places where the easy choice is the right choice, where it's affordable and accessible and available, that this is essential. So I will stop there to make sure that we have time for everyone. But maybe my last thought would just be, we don't have to have a false positivity. We know that people respond best to feeling good. Like, we will do things we feel good about, but we also need to be clear-eyed as solution providers, that this is not easy. So it's not about false positivity, but about channeling the power of the people and channeling the power of positive behavior change. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellie. I'll just want to warn the speakers that I'm a little bit pressed with time, so I'll need shorter responses. But Lorena, may I come to you and get your reaction to the questions, to the discussion, and maybe one message to the participants today?
Muchas gracias. Yo quiero hacer un comentario general.
So much. I'd actually like to provide a general comment on the things that other participants in this panel have mentioned. As a matter of fact, personally speaking, I grew up with grandparents who are part of the Quechua community. My grandparents are Quechua, and they had three main values, which are now values that are included in the Constitution of Bolivia: don't lie, don't steal, and don't be lazy. Amalula, Amasela, Amakela. Why am I saying this? Because if we stop lying in what we're doing in public policies and international policies, Mother Earth will thank you. If we stop stealing natural resources, if we stop over exploiting, then I know Mother Earth will be appreciative. And if we stop being lazy or too relaxed to the decisions that we make, this will also be very important for this agreement and what we're doing. These are all spiritual values of a people that can then be shared to society. And with what the first intervention said concerning local leadership and about promoting environmental and climate education for our youth, for our children, but also to recover these values that people have, it's going to be very important overall to be able to live in harmony. And what we have been promoting is to live well, but amongst everything, for everybody, and with sustainability in the future. Because if we continue to pollute, if we continue to to run down our resources and continue using this, we're kind of harming ourselves. We're working towards our own end. And this is so important because the indigenous communities knew this, and we're seeing this. So I ask you to commit to see with new eyes. Not everything needs to be modern and consumption. We're here because we're searching for alternatives. Thank you.
And Sabine, get ready. You will have the very, very, very final word of the panel. Suhair.
So the final words from youth side that I want to share with you, that it has been 50 years of environmental multilateralism, and 30 years we are celebrating the creation of Rio Conventions. But still, I mean, within the 30 years, how much we have achieved, if we sit to assess that, we'll see only failures. And still, these three conventions, they are creating voluntary targets. They're they are still, I mean, we are fighting, and in these 30 years we have seen biodiversity declining, and still UNFCCC is struggling to getting member states engaged in the real climate action. I understand we are here for this legally binding instrument. We want a treaty, global plastic treaty, which will be more into action. And we literally don't want this agreement to be one of those conventions or agreements which has ended up organizing or convening annual or biannual picnics or exhibitions in the name of COPs or conferences. Rather than, we want this agreement to share the message to our global leaders that they don't need to come to the COPs to lecture us what we should do and what our common responsibilities are. Rather, we should actually address what our distinguished or separate responsibilities are, and this legally binding document should have the provision of, assessing the performance of different stakeholders, different member states periodically. Thank you.
Thank you, Suhair. And Sabine, I'm coming to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a fantastic discussion. I've learned so much. So just very briefly, I wanted to clarify one, I think, misunderstanding, because someone put in the chat and it was commented on that industry is also part of the problem and solution. And absolutely, yes. All I'm saying is we need to focus on the people. And industry is also not a solitary block. There are people who are very engaged. There are people who couldn't care less. And I want us to think about the motives and how do we get to those people making decisions. That's important. The second thing was I wanted to have a discussion about engaging and empowering young people, because I sometimes have the feeling we burden the young people. We say, well, you'll sort it. And that's a really problematic construct. So I'd be really interested in your opinion, but there's no time to discuss much more. The third point is on scaling behavior change. I think we could think quite creatively in terms of a social infrastructure that allows for innovation to happen. That could be set up at a larger scale. So it's not the answer as such, it's an infrastructure, a process that we put in place for social innovation, for people coming together. And then the very last point, a really important point, some people may not be able to afford better products or more pro-environmental products. It's not about replacing products. We need to think much more creatively about changing lifestyles, about doing things differently. It's not about only the financial side. I'll stop there, but thanks very much for this discussion. It's been brilliant.
Thank you very much, Sabine, as well. And allow me to thank all the speakers and to thank all of you participating in this very lively discussion. It was a very, very interesting session. I'm not going to try and wrap up, especially because we will get complaints from plenary that we're closing late. So thanks very much to everybody for joining us, and congratulations to the speakers again.